everyone, it's Tanya. Glad to have you back in the garden today. We're indoors again today. It's bitterly cold here just outside of Chicago, zone 5B/6. And today is winter sowing day. So it's shortly after Christmas, and that's a sign to me as a gardener that I need to winter sow my seeds. So today we will be winter sowing the seeds that we reviewed together in the previous video. If you watched that, if you didn't, check it out here. And I'll be winter sowing all of these seeds and show you step by step how I go about doing that. Many of us are familiar with winter sowing, but if you are not and you're new to this is the perfect place to start. Winter sowing is essentially our own ability in colder climates to sow seeds in the dead of winter using tiny greenhouses, which basically create microclimates in tiny little containers when placed outside. These small containers have to be clear, so they're usually clear water bottles, plastic salad containers, large clear Tupperware containers that create tiny microclimates that allow the seed to germinate in the exact right conditions that are ideal for them. So there are many different benefits of winter sowing, and this is why I keep coming back to this method over and over. Benefit number one, it takes up less space. So by sowing my seeds in small containers and placing them outdoors, I'm freeing up space in my own home and also reducing my dependency on additional lights that I have to purchase or additional special seed starting mix that I have to purchase, right? I'm leveraging nature's sun and the weather systems to do the work for me, which is fantastic. Less maintenance for me. And that brings me to benefit number two. These are by far less maintenance than actually starting seeds indoors. Now, it's not completely hands off. I still do need to periodically check on my winter sowed containers outside to ensure that the containers are sealed, they haven't tipped over, but all in all, they are much less maintenance than if I start my seeds indoors, which I also do. So that is benefit number two. Benefit number three is that I simply have the opportunity to plant more plants because I have more space outdoors in my backyard than I do in my basement under my grow lights. So that is fantastic. I can really try and experiment new seeds that I might not do otherwise if I were just to rely on the seeds space that I have downstairs. Benefit number four, and this is by far my favorite, is that the seeds are already hardened off. And basically that means that I don't need to worry about them succumbing to slightly cold temperatures or a light frost if we were to have one as it nears the time when I'm ready to plant them into a garden bed, because these plants are already acclimated to the cooler temperatures, right? They've germinated and really grown up, so to speak, in a cooler climate. Whereas my very cozy babied indoor seedlings really need that tender care and need to be brought in and out every day during May when I'm hardening them off and getting ready to plant them outside. And that is very time consuming and kind of a hassle for me. So that is one benefit that I really appreciate about winter sowing. The types of seeds that prefer winter sowing are those that are cold hardy, so cold hardy flowers, cold hardy vegetables that you would plant in the spring, or perennials that really live in my area and are hardy in my zone. So any combination of those, and they are sure to do well with winter sowing. So the seeds that I'll be winter sowing today are those that I covered in my previous video, and that includes yarrow, bachelor button, aster, heirloom, hollyhock, cosmos, and verbascum mullein, and additional cosmos. So these are all cold hardy flowers that will give me a lot of pink blooms this coming season, and I'm really excited. So let's dive in. So these are the supplies we're going to need for the project. Get your seeds on hand that you're ready to winter sow. You want to collect any number of clear or slightly clear water jugs. Here I've got an apple juice container and a water container. Now these are already cut. I've actually saved these from several years ago in a garbage bag in my basement. So this is what you'll want to do to the bottle, and I'll go over that in just a second. So you get your jugs, however many jugs you think you'd like to have based on the number of seeds that you have. You'll need duct tape or something comparable that will keep the container closed. You'll want a pair of scissors on hand. I like to write down what it is that I've sown in which container with a pen and piece of paper, kind of old school. And then I also use nail polish to label the container. I have found that this is really weather resistant. It's an old hack that I came across years ago, and I would highly recommend. I would discourage you from grabbing a permanent marker, as that will wash away with precipitation, snow, whatnot. Nail polish really sticks to it. So this is what I use, and you'll see here in just a moment that I write the number on the bottle and then record the name and the corresponding number on my paper. And then you'll also want a bucket, a container of pre-moistened potting soil. It doesn't have to be seed starting soil. It can just be regular old potting soil. And that's what I have. Now, since I'm doing this indoors, I'm going to be extra careful not to make a mess of this room. But it was so cold outside, I thought, you know what, I can do this indoors. So we'll see if this is successful without making a mess. Now, if you don't have pre-cut bottles like I do, I want to show you up close how I've gone ahead and cut this. This has obviously already been used. It's been through a few seasons, but basically, you just want to take your bottle and take your scissors or X-Acto knife, whatever it is that you have on hand that's sharp enough, and cut a slit around, leaving about 2 to 3 inches of a flap. So that way you can open and close the container and it doesn't become detached. This will be taped shut once the soil is in here with the seeds. And then as the weather changes, as it becomes warmer, you can lift off the lid, leave it exposed, let the seedlings kind of get more sun, get some fresh air, and then close it if the temperatures drop down again. Same thing here with this one. You'll want to cut this so that there's just a small flap here, so that way the bottle can be attached and detached, but it doesn't become entirely unattached, preventing it from creating that greenhouse effect. So what I've gone ahead and done is pre-filled some of my containers already. I'll continue to do the rest, just so I only have to wash my hands once. But I just want to point out a few things. So notice this soil is pretty damp. It is pre-moistened. You want it to be sticking together kind of like in a clump like that, but not dripping wet. And that can really lead to fungal issues like damping off for a seedling. So you want to make sure that it is damp, but not too moist. And the level of the soil should be right around 5 to 6 inches, enough for the seedling to really form a healthy root system in the container. So one thing you will also want to do is cut slits into the bottom of your container right here, just to ensure that the water drips out if there is excess moisture. You're going to want to cut slits in those so that way the water can run off and doesn't accumulate in the container itself. All right, so I've got all of my containers potted up. That wasn't as messy or as a disaster as I anticipated it would be. But right now, I'll go ahead and put everyone on the floor except for one, and that way we can start seeding things together. First things first, I've got my cut container filled with soil, again, about 5, 6 inches in there, and I'll go ahead and start with my yarrow. And this one, again, is very cold hardy. I talked about this in my other video as well. Super tough plant, hardy down to a zone 3, I believe, and a perennial in my area where I live in zone 5B/6. This is the Ceres Queen yarrow, so soft shades of pinks, purples, and this one here, let's see here, surface sow. So really just scatter it lightly on the top. Now, a word of caution when winter sowing. It's really easy just to take a handful of seeds and scatter them in here, and I've done that many times. It works. However, what I was often left with is just like a mass cluster of seeds that were knotted together. The roots were knotted together, so I ended up having to kind of tease them apart, which took a bit, and sometimes it actually ended up sacrificing the seedlings. So I would be as strategic in planting or as intentional as in planting the seedlings in this container as you would in your indoor seed starting cells, if you've done that before, where you just kind of place a few in each cell. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and place them kind of in the quadrants of the container. Scooch a little bit more soil there. And that way, hopefully I get 5 healthy seedlings in this container that are spread apart and that I can easily divide. So here I put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And hopefully I can easily divide them when it's time to take it out. So now this is ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and close up the container using my duct tape. So I want to cut a good amount off because I will be taping this around the entire perimeter of the plant. All right, so here it is. Taping it around the entire slit edge, forming a nice seal. And ensuring that there are no cracks in the cut. And so what the duct tape does, it essentially allows us to remove it and add it back again when it's time to open up the seedlings, to check on them, and to maybe let the seedlings begin to harden off in warmer weather. All right, there it is, nice and sealed off. Now you'll notice here this has a number 9. This is actually the same nail polish from 3 years ago. So you can see how long this stuff holds. I will go ahead and keep this the number 9. So I will go ahead and write this corresponding number 9 onto this piece of paper. And then I'll put this number 9 and the yarrow in a spreadsheet when I get in front of my laptop. There we go. Number 9. Now, you'll notice that I did leave the lid off, and that's because we want to allow the precipitation and the water to come in here. This is not entirely set it and forget it, so I just want to advise you of that. If you are, for example, succumbed with a ton of rain where these things are really being saturated, go ahead and put them in a dry location because the seedlings could die from fungal issues. They could just be, drowning in that water. So just a word of caution with that. You'll also want to make sure that they don't tip over. And if they get too dry, right, you'll want to supplement with a little bit of water here and there. If you live in a very dry, hot location or a dry location that doesn't get a lot of snowfall, for example, you'll want to supplement that. So I will be monitoring that as well. So let's go ahead and do the rest of them. But before I forget, I have to log yarrow on my piece of paper. Next, I'll be doing bachelor buttons. And bachelor buttons prefer to be sewn 1/4 of an inch deep. So again, kind of using the same concept. I'll be just poking some holes here. And typically I like to sew about 2 seeds per hole, just to ensure a little bit of a safety net should the first seed not germinate. I have a backup. That's kind of a best practice that I've always had. And sometimes I'm even able to separate the 2 seedlings that both sprout in the same hole, which is then results in more plants. This one I'm going to go ahead and sew a little bit more thickly, and just because I want more bachelor buttons. All right, so now I'm going to tape it shut again. So I've got all my seeds sewn here. I'm really excited and glad that I got this project done. So now I'm gonna go ahead and place these outside into a protected area, but that also gets plenty of sunshine and exposure to precipitation. Thanks so much for joining me. Please like and subscribe. I'd love to hear what you're doing for winter sowing, or if you've never tried it before, if you have any questions, drop in the comments below, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye.